I'm Diana Wentworth, and I'm so excited to be with you. I'm the co-founder of the Inside Edge Foundation for Education. It's been a forum for thought leaders and all kinds of people who are activists in the world where they meet and greet and expand who they are. And we've been recording 1,500 of our past speakers. And we're going to take the very best of these and offer them on our YouTube channel. We're starting to post them weekly. So what you want to do is go to our YouTube channel and to subscribe to it, and you'll get all kinds of information about what we're offering. It's so thrilling to be offering this legacy to you now. It feels really good. I want to tell you 7 fast facts about our special guest speaker. He's been inspiring laughter and life learning for more than 25 years. At the age of 17, he became a member of the world-famous Magic Castle in Hollywood. He's been named among the top 5 entertaining speakers in North America. He's been featured on more than 100 radio and television shows, including both MSNBC and Fox News. He is an expert on the life and music of the 2016 winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, Bob Dylan. And he's the author of the book, Bob Dylan Can Change Your Life, 61 Ways to Invent a Legendary Life. His message for us today is called How to Invent a Legendary Life. Please welcome Adam Christing.
Magic is fun. Let's have this gentleman right here. Would you please stand? You don't have to come up here, sir, or put your shoes on or anything, but could you just stand? The gentleman with the wonderful mustache. Yes, Tom Selleck is here with us. Give him a nice hand. Please stand. Yes. Okay, so we have this gentleman, and how about this gentleman with a nice blue shirt, just having a cup of coffee there? Could you just stand, sir? Please stand where you are. Yes, great. And let's see, we need one other person. Oh, I know you, but could you just say your name so everyone can hear? Correct. Brooke, could you please stand? Let's try something fun with these gentlemen. We'll get the magic started. We don't have time to do a whole long card trick or anything, but let's meet these gentlemen. Brooke, and your name, sir, is? Harry and Toby? With a T. Okay, thanks, Toby. Check this out. I brought this extra rubber band because we're going to seal this pack of cards with some rubber bands so they cannot escape. And Toby, we're going to start with you. Actually, we're going to end up with you. It'll be very dramatic. Let's hand these cards. In fact, Brooke, if I toss these to you, you're comfortable catching them? Here we go. If he pulls this off, I want you to give him a big inside edge round of applause. Get ready to catch him, Brooke. Here they come. Give him some love. Yes. Fabulous. Brooke, here's what I'd like you to do. Don't remove any of the cards. Just take a peek and eyeball one card. Yeah, just visually eyeball one card. Hold it in your mind. I want you to toss the cards. Your name again is still Harry. Oh, he made a fantastic catch. And he saved her head. That was impressive. Okay, Harry, same thing. Just memorize them. Hold it in your mind. I'm curious, Harry, do you believe in reincarnation? No. Oh, if you said yes, I was going to say, welcome back. But anyway, Harry, I want you to make the loving long toss to our friend Toby. Here we go. Give Toby a hand. He made a great catch. Same thing, Toby. Crack it open. Eyeball one card. Just eyeball one. Hold it in your mind. Great. Have you got it, Toby? I want you to toss the cards to me. On the count of 3. No. Thanks, Toby. I sense some anger in your life. That's okay, Toby. I love the intensity. We're going to be talking about passion later, okay? Gentlemen, concentrate on your card. I'm getting an impression of, right now I have an impression of 2 cards, very different. By the way, if you're here this morning and you're psychic like I am, I have a quick joke for you. Okay. I'm getting 3 very different cards, gentlemen. I'm getting 3 of spades, 9 of hearts, king of clubs. Did I get your card, Harry? Could you have a seat? Brooke, did I get yours? Thank you, Brooke. I I didn't get yours, did I? Ah. Okay. Was it 5 of hearts? 5 of hearts. Great. Could you have a seat? Would you give these 3 gentlemen a big round of applause? It's magic. Yes. Now, that's pretty cool. The truth is, any 10-year-old kid could do that trick with 40 years experience. But you know what is more amazing to me is what is up with all this attention being paid to Bob Dylan. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2016. There are over 1,000 books now about Bob Dylan, and literally more coming out every week. I'll give you a little sampling here. Here's a children's book called When Bob Met Woody, and that would be Woody Guthrie, not the cartoon or animated character, Woody Guthrie. It's an interesting story. Woody Guthrie wrote This Land Is Your Land. Huge influence on Bob Dylan. There's actually a Bob Dylan encyclopedia, 800 pages deep. Here's an interesting book. Wanted Man in Search of Bob Dylan. People are fascinated by this man. Is he a myth? Is he a living legend? Is he a fraud? Is he a combination of all those things? There's even a book called Bob Dylan and Philosophy, where philosophers analyze his work from an existential perspective and all kinds of philosophical perspectives. But wait, as they say in the Ginsu commercial, there's more. There's a book called Oh No, Not Another Bob Dylan Book. But here's what fascinates me. Go to a bookstore. There aren't many left. We lost Borders. We still have Barnes & Noble at this time. Go to a Barnes & Noble bookstore, and there's a children's section, and they have history books. Books that say, who was Rosa Parks? Who was Thomas Edison? Who was Winston Churchill? But notice the difference in this book. Who is Bob Dylan? He has already made the history books, and he is still alive. Who is Bob Dylan? Now, we're not. Let's be honest here. How many of you? Let's show by applause. How many of you enjoy the music, the work, the voice of Bob Dylan? Let's hear by applause. Okay. And you can be really honest here. We're all about candor here at Inside Edge. How many of you, by applause, it's okay, don't like or don't care for the music or the work of Bob Dylan? One of the people clapping, by the way, is my wife. I just want to be... But you know what? That's okay. Listen carefully. Bob Dylan can help you find your voice, even if you can't stand his. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can invent a legendary life. And I want you to notice I'm carefully using that word invent. Not discover, not grow into, but invent a legendary life. I think if you were to look up the word America in the dictionary, it could say, see Bob Dylan. And let me tell you why. As a young man named Robert Zimmerman, on track to manage his dad's appliance store in Hibbing, Minnesota, he felt that he heard a voice. He'd actually attended a Buddy Holly concert when he was 17 years old, and he felt that Buddy Holly was looking right into his eyes. And he felt this sense of destiny about himself. Sadly, a few days later, Buddy Holly died. The day the music died in that terrible plane crash. Who else was killed in that plane crash? Anyone remember? Big Bopper and Richie Valens. The day the music died. But it didn't die for Robert Zimmerman. Today we're going to talk, not so much about Bob Dylan. We will be talking about him, but we want to talk about how can Bob Dylan make a difference in terms of inspiring you to ignite the passion in your life, to revitalize your dream, to become who you were meant to be. And since we started with magic, let's try this. Instead of me telling you, I have 61 chapters in my book, by the way. 61. They're about 2 pages each, and they're about the life and the lessons that we can learn from Bob Dylan. We do not have time to cover 61 chapters today, but I want to give you a few examples of them, and then one or two or three of you will randomly select 3 of these chapters, and we will feel that that's our destiny this morning to talk about those. So I'll give you a few examples. Make a name for yourself is a chapter. Make startling statements. Regroup. Change your set list. Expand your circle. Steal a lot. Show you care. You see the contradictions in this man's life already? Stay out of reach. Keep the end of the world in mind. 61 different chapters. I'm going to ask Tracy, if you don't mind, we're going to just select 3. I've divided them into sections because Dylan has gone through many phases, many transformations. Tracy, could you just hold your hand, palm out like that? And from the top section, you're going to select our first topic of how Bob Dylan can help us change our life. So just lift up, and it's okay if I see it. Yeah, so you picked Find Your Voice. So we'll be talking about how Bob Dylan can inspire us to find our voices. Michael, same thing. Could you put your hand flat out and just lift up in that middle and just, it's okay if I see it. Just lift, the middle, the yellow section, just lift up. And, change your tune. Okay, I'm going to have my friend Joel, who is a musician. You'll hear from him a little bit later. The last third pillar, if you will, just lift up with your thumb. Lift up like that. There you go. And what does it say?
Fulfill your destiny.
Okay, so let's remember those. What was the first one? Find your voice, change your tune, fulfill your destiny. Now, I mentioned Woody Guthrie earlier. If you want to be great, imitate. That's the starting place. If you want to be great, imitate. Sometimes we think that we have to be creators. Truth is, we are recreators. There is nothing new under the sun. It's how we combine things. Bob Dylan believed that God alone is the creator. And so there's a tradition in folk music called the magpie tradition. And that tradition means you take a little bit of this, you take a little bit of that, you mix it together in your own soup, and you create something. How did Bob Dylan find his voice? He started by imitating Woody Guthrie. In fact, one of his first girlfriends, he told her, "Call me Woody." When he was still Bobby or Robert Zimmerman, call me Woody. He dressed like Woody Guthrie. One of his first concerts in New York, they found Woody's jacket and let him wear it. So think about who's been an inspiration, a hero in your life. And this has been true throughout American history with people who've invented themselves or reinvented themselves. Ever hear about a man named Mark Twain? His name was Samuel Clemens. But he was inspired by the Mississippi River, by the boats, and he took the name Mark Twain. What about a young Jewish boy, son of a rabbi named Eric Weiss? Anyone ever hear of Eric Weiss? Not very many people, but I bet you've heard of Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini was inspired by his hero, Robert Houdin. And he believed as a young man that by adding the letter I, he would become like his hero. So he became Houdin, and added the I, he became Houdini. The list could go on and on. Now, you don't have to change your name to change your life. But it's good to identify a hero who can help you find your voice by first listening to their voice. For me, as a young comedian, I was hugely influenced by Steve Martin. And I tried to do jokes like Steve Martin. I didn't have gray hair, but I wanted to look like him. I got into magic because Steve Martin started off as a magician. Did you know he worked at the Disneyland magic shop? No. Yes. He demonstrated magic tricks at the Disneyland magic shop. He worked in the Birdcage Theater in Knott's Berry Farm. And he had heroes that he was emulating. Johnny Carson emulated Jack Benny. If you want to be great, imitate, but here's the next thing, then innovate. So we go from imitation to innovation, and that's what Bob Dylan did. But before we move on to that, remember our pillar right now is find your voice. Bobby tried to sound like Woody. I want to know who could sound like Bobby here. Who could do just a little Dylan vocal impression, okay? Somebody's got to be able to do it. I bet one of my friends here could do a quick Bob Dylan impression. Who could just do a little bit of voice? Brooke, I bet you could do a little bit. Yeah. Come on, just stand up, Brooke. We got to hear a little bit of this. Yeah, go ahead. Here he goes. Just give us your best shot.
Hey, Woody Guthrie, I wrote you a song.
Whoa. Not only did he do a little bit of the voice, he quoted some lyrics. Give Brooke a hand. Who else? It's okay. Let's just go for it. Who could just do a little imitation? Anyone else? Yes, I'm going to come over here. Let's get this on the microphone. Let's pass this over to John. John doing Bob.
Well, don't criticize what you can't understand.
Come on!
'Cause the times they are changing.
I wasn't sure I was going to get the microphone back. Wow. The times they are a-changin'. Fantastic. Bob Dylan wrote that song when he was 21 years old. He found his voice by first modeling the voice of Woody Guthrie. Now, a lot of people think, and you would understand this, when you hear descriptions of Bob Dylan's voice, I've heard all kinds of things. It sounds like sand and gravel. Our youngest daughter says, it sounds like a raccoon being run over by a train. But what did Don McLean, who wrote the song about the day the music died, he wrote the song American Pie. He references Bob Dylan 3 times in that song. The jester on the sideline in a cast. But when he talks about his voice, Don McLean says, with a voice that came from you and me. He became the voice of a generation by being different. Not by being like Woody or being like anyone else, but being himself. Actually taking on this character, I'm just going to sing the way I want to sing it. And when people tried to get him to change his songs or change his voice, he wouldn't have anything to do with it. Bob Dylan was booked to be on the Ed Sullivan Show the year before the Beatles. So Elvis, huge breakthrough at the Ed Sullivan Show, and we know what happened with the Beatles, literally changed their future and the future of Western pop culture. Dylan was booked to be on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he wanted to do a song that fit his voice. It was a political song, and they said, here at CBS, we're trying to avoid some of those political controversies. You have so many songs, Bob. He had Blowing in the Wind by then, and they said, just do a different song, and he said, no, and he walked off the show. He wanted to be true to his voice. And so what happened is, instead of just being a star for a week or a month or even a year, he became a legend. And part of it was his commitment to staying true to his voice. He walked off that show. How did that electrify the folk community? Whoa, this guy's one of us. He's not going to capitulate to the man. A few months later, where was Dylan performing? With Martin Luther King Jr. at the March on Washington, a few feet from where MLK was giving his I Have a Dream speech. Bob Dylan was singing in that strange, wonderful, earthy voice. Find your voice. I want to give kind of an example of this. I'm wondering if there's someone here who has a unique birthday. Maybe you're born on Valentine's Day. Maybe you're born on the 4th of July. And you'd be like, wait, when were you born, Elizabeth? 4th of July. 4th of July. Give her a hand. She represents freedom. Yes. March 4th. That's awesome. Oh, I get it now. March 4th. I didn't get it. I'm the speaker. That's wonderful. And isn't that fitting for Diana being a commanding, visionary leader? March 4th. Isn't that interesting? Who else has yes, what is your birthday?
October 21st.
Uh-huh.
It's Blackjack.
Oh, give her a hand, Blackjack. Great. Who else? Yeah, and the way in the back. Christmas Day. What is your name? Give Dean a hand. He was born on Christmas. That's great. Dean, that one's very fascinating to me because we're going to be talking about sharing your gifts, and people are known for giving gifts on Christmas. So we'll come back, but I love these birthdays. So meaning is not something that you discover, it's something that you invent. I'll give you an example of this. My wife Barb is here, and I love Barb, and I was madly in love with Barb. I still am. But when we first were getting to know each other, I was going through a rough time in my life. I was a single dad. I was kind of depressed. She was living in Canada, where she's from, and so we were doing the pen pal thing, phone calls, long-distance romance. And I got this envelope, and it said, I opened it up, and there was a cassette. Raise your hand if you remember cassettes. Okay, good. We've all just aged ourselves. Mixtape. On the cassette, it said, parachute. And I thought, this is interesting. Oh, this is meaningful because she knows I'm going through a rough time. I'm a single dad. I'm in a transition. And she's telling me that I'm going to land safely. That's a beautiful metaphor. And then I popped the cassette into my car and I was driving. I love song after song. There was a song of Sting covering the song Little Wing. Oh, I love it. I kept driving the car extra distance. I'm going to drive to the beach so I can hear more of these songs, right? And so parachute. And so finally I got on the phone with Barb and I said, Barb, thank you for parachute. And she said, oh, I'm glad you like it. I haven't listened to it. My brother's a DJ and he put that together and gave it to me. For me, it was so meaningful. We must remember that we project meaning onto all kinds of things. I could have my friend Tracy stand and I could give her a push, and that could be interpreted literally hundreds of different ways. Oh, he's giving her a push into her dreams. No, he's assaulting her. No, that's his way of showing affection. There are different ways we can interpret almost anything, right? Bob Dylan interpreted everything, including his voice, as not happening to him, but happening for him. Because he believed, and still believes, that he had a divine destiny to fulfill. Well, now let's talk about the second one. The second one that was selected was, thank you, Change Your Tune. Dylan might be most famous for this. It's way up there on the list. Besides his voice, what happened, does anyone know, in July of 1965, where things got a little shocking? Anyone know? That's very good. He did get in a motorcycle accident. If we have time, we'll unpack that a little bit. No, he went electric. Now, today, that doesn't seem like a big deal. And why was it even such a big deal in 1965? We already had some pretty heavy rock and roll happening. The Beatles were already huge. They were already electric. What was the big deal about Bob Dylan going electric in the summer of 1965? He changed his tune. He changed his tune, and it upset a lot of other people. No. You're our folk protest poet. I want to stick with Blowing in the Wind. I want to stick with the times they are a-changin'. I want the girl from the North Country. Oh, please be that, Bob Dylan. The other reason why it was so shocking was not only what he did, but where he did it. Where he did it. He did it at the Folk Festival, Newport, Rhode Island. That would be like going into a sanctuary and doing a rap concert for some people, right? It was where he did it. And so the rumor came that other artists wanted to take an axe and slash the cables to stop this loud, blaring music. And about half the people were cheering him on when he did like a Rolling Stone. Half the people were booing. It created like a mania. What is going on? Then, of course, he toured that summer. And the next summer, do you know what happened? In 1966, he was in Manchester, England, and all these fans who had his first couple of albums that were mellow and that were super meaningful and folk protest kinds of songs. And that's what they came to hear in Manchester, England. And he had the band, a band that's so good they're called The Band, was backing him up. And he did his opening acoustic set to sort of please his fans. But then after the intermission, he came out and blared the electric music. And one fan, there's actually a book about this, an entire book about one episode at one concert. And the book is called Judas, because the fan interrupted Dylan's concert and yelled out, "Judas!" And Dylan responded immediately, said, "I don't believe you. You're a liar." And then he turned around to the band, and I'm going to clean this up, and he said, "Play effing loud." And they did. He changed his tune. One of the things that makes Dylan so compelling is he cares more about what he thinks than what you and I think. There was a fan one day who walked up to Bob Dylan and said, "Mr. Dylan, Bob, you don't know me, but I know you." And Dylan said, "Let's keep it that way." If you live for other people's praise, you will die by their criticism. Dylan, throughout his career, as he's been continually changing his tune, has confounded critics. Confounded critics. Using humor. The great philosopher Voltaire once said he was not a religious man. I believe he was either a deist or an atheist. But the only prayer I've seen from Voltaire says this: "Lord, help me make my enemies look ridiculous." Dylan has, throughout his career, made his critics look ridiculous by continually changing his tune. Because Dylan says nostalgia is death. And he's inspired so many other artists. Raise your hand if you've heard of Led Zeppelin. Hands down. Raise your hand if you're here this morning. Okay. By the way, just so you know, Led Zeppelin's not a person, it's a band. I think you know that. So Led Zeppelin was recently offered about $200 million to reunite. Now, you can't live on that, but that's a pretty good sum of money. And Robert Plant, the lead singer of Led Zeppelin, said no. I think some of the other band members wanted to do. He said no. Why, Mr. Plant? Because I'm not a human jukebox. Because I want to change my tune, because I'm making new music with Alison Krauss. Of course, he doesn't need the money, but more important, he wants to keep true to his vision, his destiny of being an artist, just like Robert Zimmerman, who became Bob Dylan. Another example of Bob Dylan changing his tune. It infuriated a lot of people because, okay, I'm embracing you as my folk protest guy. Now you've changed the tune and you're like this electric musician, so I'm going to embrace that. You're like a rock and roller. You're wearing the dark shades. Okay, I'm really into that. Now you're playing country music? Lay, lady, lay? What is this? You sound like a lounge singer. You've changed your voice even. What is going on? What? Now you've been in a motorcycle accident and you disappear for basically 7 or 8 years. People didn't know if Bob Dylan was still alive. He went into the basement of a little house that they called Big Pink and made really off-the-grid recordings like Quinn the Eskimo. And some of those leaked out and later became what is known as the basement tapes. He kept changing his tune. In fact, George Harrison, who produced the first mega rock star benefit show, the Concert for Bangladesh, he invited Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan hadn't toured in many, many years. He disappeared. Was Bob Dylan going to show up? Well, Bob Dylan showed up at Madison Square Garden, and George was really excited. And he said, "Bob, if you could play Blowin' in the Wind, people would love it." And Dylan said, "Are you going to play I Want to Hold Your Hand?" Now, he did play Blowin' in the Wind, but George didn't even know if he was going to show up during the show. If you can see this, if you Google it on YouTube, George Harrison, Bangladesh, he had his set list on the mic stand, and he had his songs, Here Comes the Sun, and the next thing it said is simply Bob, ? I don't know if he's going to come out. And he says, "Like to bring on a friend of us all, Mr. Bob Dylan." And the crowd goes completely nuts. Because we respect people who respect their own voice, their own wisdom. Dylan has a song you probably haven't heard called Trust Yourself. See, Dylan believes that really you answer to God alone. Don't answer to the press. You don't answer to your critics. You don't even answer to your friends. You answer to God alone. That gives you the freedom to change your tune. And it makes him a fascinating figure. Well, we have a third pillar. What is it? You remember? Fulfill your destiny. Oh, this is a great one. I carry this with me. I carry a lot of things with me that I've learned from Bob Dylan. I'll give you a kind of a sneak bonus one that was not selected today, but one of the chapters in my book is keep a secret notebook, and I do that. And here it is. I guess it's not secret anymore. Dylan wrote lyrics to Tangled Up in Blue and the great songs on what many consider the greatest singer-songwriter album of the 1970s called Blood on the Tracks. He wrote those lyrics in a little 39-cent journal that he kept with him. But back to our third plank, fulfill your destiny. A young Bob Dylan, then Robert Zimmerman, was sitting in his high school English class when he slipped his friend Arnold Koski a note. Koski held on to the note for 50 years. Would you like to know what it said? This is what Robert Zimmerman, before he was even Bob Dylan, knew about his destiny. Arnie, I'm going to make it big. I know it for sure. And when I do, you bring this piece of paper, and for 2 months you can stay with me no matter where I am. He had this sense that he was going to be big, that he was going to matter, that he was going to make a difference, that he had a destiny. He's even said that he feels that God gave him the Bob Dylan myth. And his job is to just keep showing up and being Bob Dylan, whoever that is. One time, Bob Dylan was very down. I want to tell you, he's had many disastrous things. Many of the lessons we can learn from his life are things not to do. You don't want to look to Bob Dylan if you want just a good life, because he's not always been the nicest guy. He's been married multiple times. One time he introduced his backup singers by saying, "This is my ex-wife, my next wife, my girlfriend, and my fiance." And he was joking, but there was some truth to it, perhaps. His son, Jacob Dylan, became a star with the Wallflowers. He's been a very good dad. But my point is not to look at his morality, but to look at his work as an artist. So he was very down in the mid-'80s, probably the weakest, worst point of his career. Raise your hand if you heard of a little concert called Live Aid. 1.9 billion people watched that show. Bob Dylan bombed. Completely bombed. The biggest audience maybe in human history for a musical concert, and he completely bombed. He had a couple of drunk Rolling Stones backing him up, and they're raising money for starving children in Ethiopia. And Dylan says something like, I'm paraphrasing, like, I hope some of the money, maybe $1 million or $2 million, can be given to American farmers. And the organizer of the event was pulling his hair out. But you know what happened a year later? They started something called Farm Aid with Willie Nelson and Neil Young and other artists. So he still had an impact. But I want to tell you about a decision that Dylan made to fulfill his destiny. He was at a very low point. He talks about this in his memoir, Chronicles, Volume 1. He wasn't sure if he should just hang it up. This is 1988, and he made a decision. I'm a musician. I would call him a poet musician. And he decided to stay on the road, whether people wanted to show up or not. This is 1988. He was not filling stadiums. This is after Live Aid. Since that time, he has done on average 100 shows a year. He's turning 78. 78 years old. He's still doing 80 to 100 dates a year. He's done more concerts than U2, Bruce Springsteen, and the Rolling Stones combined. On the road, headed for another joint, tangled up in blue. Are you going to fulfill your destiny? First, as Carl Sandburg once said, it takes a dream to make a dream come true. What is your dream? What is the destiny, the divine destiny that you have been given? Here's a little hint. It was probably imprinted on you when you were a young boy or girl. I know for me, when I was really young, I knew I wanted to be a magician. And so I made a recording, and I said, I want to be a magician. I want to do it for a living. And I was probably 9 or 10 when I made that first recording. I continued to listen to it. When I was 17 years old, I auditioned for this famous club in Hollywood, the Magic Castle. My hand was so nervous, shaking, I couldn't put the card in the secret compartment. And when I auditioned, I'm in high school, Diana Zimmerman, who became a great mentor to me, she said, "Your magic's not that good, but you're funny. We're going to let you in." 2 years later, I was assisting David Copperfield on a TV special. And it all went back to my sense of destiny. One of the things we can learn from Bob Dylan is it's never too late to get back reignited about your passion, your dream, your destiny. Well, I want to involve everybody, and I think it's Dean, right? Does somebody have a dollar bill maybe in the front section? I want to try a quick little experiment. Anyone have a dollar bill? Doesn't have to be brand new. You got a dollar? Yeah. Dean, would you mind coming up for a moment? Would you get from all the way from the back? Give Dean a big hand clap. Come up here, Dean. Now here's what is your name, sir? Doug. Now, Doug, I want everyone to see this. Dean, nice to see you. Welcome. So I have no money in this wallet. And so let me just grab that bill. You don't mind donating it here? Yeah, let's grab that. Thank you. That was so easy. Who has a $100 bill? Now, Dean, tell us again, when is your birthday?
Christmas Day,
That's amazing. And what year?
1969.
Give him another hand. How great is that? So, and Doug, here he probably doesn't get as many gifts, right? Because there's Christmas and birthday. And so we're going to make up a little bit of that deficit, and we're going to give you Doug's dollar. So take that and give Doug a hand for being so generous. And Dean, we're going to bring these ideas together about finding your voice, changing your tune, fulfilling your destiny. I want you to sign your name on that bill. Could you go do that? Yeah, just sign your name because we talk about your voice, so we want your impression on that. Yeah, go ahead. By the way, what you're doing is a federal offense. I just want to let you know. Now, he's changed the bill. We talked about changing your tune, but more importantly is this idea of destiny, fulfill your destiny. And we asked people earlier about birthdays. Each of us has a unique birthday, time when we were born. More important than that, though, Dean, it's our dream. Each one of us has been given something to do and accomplish here on earth. When Martin Luther King gave his great speech, "I Have a Dream," he didn't say, "I have a program." He didn't say, "I have an agenda." He didn't say, "I have an initiative and this is my PowerPoint presentation." No, he said, "I have a dream." It was very personal. And so is your destiny. And Dean, I think you're going to help us illustrate this. Could you open up your bill that Doug gave you? And could you, first of all, what is the first initial?
Oh my gosh. D.
And your name, your first name again?
Dean.
What is the last initial of the serial number?
W.
What is your last name?
White.
Okay, so that's interesting. And let's see, what year were you born?
1969.
And what are the last four digits of Doug's?
That's so weird. 1969.
And what is it? There are four. Yeah, it doesn't rub off. If it rubbed off, it wouldn't be very cool. Read. Why don't you read the whole thing?
D, 1, 2, which is 12, 25.
Whoa. 12 and what's next?
25.
That's Christmas, right? 12. Yeah.
1969. W.
W for White. Dean White, born on Christmas, very special, unique. No one like him. Give him a big hand. That's a bill. That's a memento for you, Dean. Yes. Yeah. So, in 1965, when Dylan literally rocked the world at the Newport Folk Festival, people were upset. And I want to tell you, some people will be upset when you fulfill your destiny. Sometimes people don't like it when they see other people living their dreams because it reminds them that they're not. Don't look back. Dylan walked off the stage, and the MC went backstage and said, "Bobby, people are upset. You've got to go out. You got to do some of the old stuff. You got to please them. Do something on the acoustic guitar." And Dylan did that. He's not always a jerk. Took his guitar, but he played a new song. And here's some of the lyrics. Strike another match. Go start anew. It's all over, baby blue. Dylan has said he not busy being born is busy dying. Are you ready to have a new birth, an experience of freedom, a reignition of your passion? I want you to notice something at your table. Everybody grab one. There's a match. We're not going to light them. There are insurance issues involved. However, I will light one symbolically. These are beautiful matches. They're souvenirs for you. They're mementos, if you will, of our time together. I'm going to strike one, and I'm going to share some lyrics. I want you to listen. This is from a song by Bob Dylan that very few people have heard because for some mysterious reason he left it off of his albums, and it wasn't discovered till years later. The song is called Up to Me, and he says, I was just too stubborn to ever be governed by enforced insanity. Someone had to reach for the rising star. I guess it was up to me. It's up to you to fulfill your God-given destiny. Strike another match. Go start anew. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. You may be seated. We'll just take a few minutes for questions and answers about Bob Dylan, about your dreams, and then we have very special guest musical artists for a couple of numbers. So raise your hand if you have a question about my book, about Bob Dylan, about magic. Yes, Michael.
His friend that had the note from high school for 50 years, did he actually deliver it to wherever Bob Dylan was? And where would that be?
Wonderful question. I have time for another. Michael, truth is, I don't know the answer to that question. I think, I read that in a biography on Dylan. I think that he kept it and just treasured it. But I do believe that Dylan would honor that promise just as he honored the commitment he made of staying on the road and since 1988. Great question. I don't know. Yes?
How and when did he take the name Bob Dylan?
One of the reasons my book, the subtitle is 61 Ways to Invent a Legendary Life, is in 1961, Dylan left Hibbing, Minnesota, where he had a nice middle-class, cozy life, and he went to New York City, the coldest winter in New York City history, January of 1961. He had no place to stay. He was couch surfing, but he wanted to meet his hero, Woody Guthrie. The next, actually 1963, 2 years later, he legally changed his name from Robert Zimmerman to Bob Dylan. And he's never explained very much in depth about why. Some people think it's based on the poet Dylan Thomas, and I think that is some influence. But believe it or not, another influence is Matt Dillon, sheriff of Gunsmoke. Because that Gunsmoke show, remember, Dylan grew up with radio. And that show was on the radio, and if you ever want to listen, it's a really cool opening about Matt Dillon. He's the sheriff coming into town. Bob Dylan went on to write songs like Knocking on Heaven's Door, Take This Badge Off of Me. So I think it's a unique fusion of that. He already had the name Bob. But he had a great line. Dylan one time said in an interview with 60 Minutes, you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. This is the land of the free. Couple more questions? Yes. Yes, the book is called Bob Dylan Can Change Your Life, 61 Ways to Invent a Legendary Life. The book will be out August 28th. We have signups. This is like a preview, so thank you for letting me share this ahead of the world. But the book is normally $25, but we're doing a special deal today, Ruben, 2 for $50. So I want to let you know that's available. No, if you sign up today for the book, we will ship it to you at the end of August, and would love to sign it for you or whatever you'd like. Thank you. Yes, Brooke.
Just fun trivia. You probably know this, but at the initial Going Electric at Newport Folk Festival, who was the backup band? Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
Wonderful band. And I don't think they even rehearsed that day, maybe for a few minutes, and Dylan's wearing his poke. It's all on YouTube. It's really amazing. And it was raucous. Yeah. By the way, he did this yet again. He has a life of getting people to boo him. And it doesn't seem to matter. It actually seems to deepen the relationship fans have. When he became a born-again Christian in 1979, he went through a time in his career where he said, I'm not going to do any of the old songs. So people showed up in San Francisco at, I think it was the Fox Theater, maybe it was the Warfield, I can't remember. And they want to hear, All Along the Watchtower and Blowing in the Wind and The Times They Are A-Changin' and Knocking on Heaven's Door. He didn't play any of those songs. And people are like yelling out, rock and roll. And Bob says, go to a Kiss concert. Because he had to do what was true for him. And so he released 3 explicitly Christian gospel type albums. Then when he sort of re-embraced maybe a larger perspective, he, I believe, retained his faith, but he believes that all of life is spiritual. Then that upset some of his hardcore Christian fans. So here's the goal. Continually upset people in your life, and you will become a legend. Maybe one more question before we introduce our special guest musicians. Oh, we do. We have time for a couple more, I guess, if you have any. Yes.
Well, it's not really a question. I didn't know that much about Bob Dylan, I'll confess. And the idea of him changing my life, just didn't really sink in. But what you've said about his not catering to people's opinion has really made a huge difference to me. I find that I get hooked by old wounds and people who've misjudged me, and I'll go back, and for some reason it just hooks me. And I really see from the examples that you've said that there is another way to be, and I want to be that way. Lao Tzu, I read the other day, is if you care what somebody says, you become their prisoner. And that sank in, and now here you are telling me something huge. So I really love what you taught.
Applaud that. That was beautiful. I think you should become the founder of this group. I do. March 4th. Fabulous, fabulous. Thank you. Bob. Ted said, give her $1. We already did that bit, Ted. We're moving on. Bob Dylan has been quoted as saying, everybody wants to know where I'm at because they don't know where they're at. So think about where you're at. And one of the things that helps me is when I think about people being critical of me, it helps to remember people aren't even thinking about me, right? They're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about how they look, about their career. And so we need to get off of ourselves and get back onto our passion and our destiny. Yes, a question in the back. By the way, we're making some delicious coffee for you. I don't know if you hear that. It's go ahead. And by the way, I think in many ways Bob Dylan would hate my book, not because, and I think he would also love it, because he truly never intended to be anyone's guru. He has that song, Trust Yourself. He has a lot of lines about basically follow what you're supposed to do, not what I'm supposed to do. But for me, what happened was I grew up with an older sister, and I grew up in the 70s, really. My older sister gave me her Beatles albums. And I was listening to amazing songs, like Rubber Soul and Norwegian Wood. And I kept hearing influence and people talking about, well, who influenced the Beatles? Bob Dylan was a massive influence on the Beatles. I'll give you a couple of examples. One, writing their own songs, not just for hits, but more confessional. Like you'd really go from I Want to Hold Your Hand to Norwegian Wood, which is a song really about a one-night stand of John Lennon's. That's a pretty big gap there, and that happened after they met Bob Dylan. And by the way, Bob Dylan was the one who turned them on to marijuana, so that's interesting. But one observer said that when the Beatles, the Fab Four, went into the hotel room to meet Bob Dylan, they came out as individuals. They came out as John, Paul, George, and Ringo. So he's really about finding your voice and inspiring us to be individuals. And so for me, it was through that gateway of the Beatles. The Beatles, in their albums and their solo work, reference in their songs Dylan 4 different times. Like on the White Album, just kind of a little crazy comment, but John Lennon has a song where he says, just like Dylan's Mr. Jones. That's on the White Album. He's referencing a 1965 Dylan song. So John Lennon was, in many ways, Woody Guthrie to Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was like that for John Lennon. Wow. Yeah. Yes and no. Bob Dylan put this on his website, and I'm completely paraphrasing this, and I'm going to try to do a little impression. He said, a lot of books about me out right now, and if you've ever met me or been impacted by me, go ahead and write a book. Who knows? Someone might have a great book in them. And so he's basically saying, go ahead, write books about me. His manager and his publisher are very generous with allowing him to be quoted. And so if you buy books about Bob Dylan, you'll notice in the back you reference where you got the lyrics. And so what my book does is each chapter opens with a statement about Dylan, then a chapter that gives us some life inspiration, and then Dylan always gets the last word. And so I always give the source on where that comes from. And if you want to read all the lyrics, go to bobdylan.com. It's got every concert, every song, and all the lyrics are there. Yeah. Yeah. One last comment before I introduce these special guests. The Nobel Prize for Literature, the highest award a writer can get, is given to Bob Dylan, and it's hard to understand him singing what the words even are. And guess what he did? He didn't show up to the ceremony. Now, a few years ago, he showed up on the TV show Pawn Stars and signed an autograph to Chumley. But when he's awarded the highest honor a writer can get, he says, I have other plans that night, and doesn't show up. It's Bob Dylan being Bob. He shows up about a month later to collect the $900 and some odd thousand, and he gave a private speech, and he was very grateful. But he's not on my timetable. He's on his.